Hey, what's going on, everyone? You are now listening to Resilience in Action with Erin Brown. Hello, everyone. This is Resilience in Action with Erin Brown, and we are here with RJ Zimmerman, podcast host, like just all around great person, the epitome of like being better every single day. Like I hope you know that you get better every single day.
I really appreciate that. You made me blush like right away. So I appreciate that very much.
Of course. I just like to give flowers where flowers are due. And in the brief time that we've known each other, you being in my orbit has definitely made a positive impact on me and how I show up in my life. So I appreciate that from you.
I appreciate that because you've had the same effect on me. Like right away, it was like when you introduced yourself and you talked about what you were talking about, I was like, oh, this is like almost mirrors, right? And every piece of content that I see that you put out, like I told you this last week, earlier this week, that listening to it fills my cup up, and that's something that is so few and far between in this world right now that I needed it, and it just gave me this spark, and I appreciate you as well. So
Well,
thank
I
you so much
appreciate
for
that.
that.
Of course. Thank you. RJ, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Uh, my name is RJ Zimmerman. I'm 35 years old. I'm a podcast host of Untapped Keg. I'm an alcoholic, father of two young children, and I recently just found out that if you allow your emotions to happen, there's a lot of strength there that you don't realize.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. When I'm one of my biggest things, and I think I know I say it all the time, is feel your feelings.
Hmm.
Feel your feelings, and whether it's rage, you want to be upset. Also know when to celebrate and when to feel joy, and feel it all. I believe that. But we're gonna rewind real quick because um your bio just said it all, and we're going to go back to alcoholic because that's something I can relate to myself. So let's just we're going to just jump right in, RJ. Okay.
Okay.
um when, how, why alcoholic? Like, okay, you're able to say that, right, with your strength, your vulnerability. When did this start happening for you?
It was after I started the podcast. I never said the word alcoholic until about, I think it was a year, maybe 8 months into the podcast. So we started the podcast because when I went sober, I listened to Chris Hardwick's podcast, Nerdist, and he interviewed celebrities, and it wasn't about sobriety, but every once in a while, he talked about being sober, and he never called himself an alcoholic, I don't think either. But listening to his stories, especially when he went sober, and he talked about like when he first made the decision to go sober, it made me feel like I wasn't alone. And I didn't do AA. I went cold turkey. I'm lucky that I'm really stubborn. So like that's basically how I did it to start. And we're about 8 to 12 months into the podcast, and I hosted it with my brother-in-law, and he's done a lot of therapy, and I mean I've started doing therapy now too, but um he really started working on that side of himself, and he would talk about alcoholism, and he became a recovery coach as well. And he would call himself an alcoholic, and I still didn't. And then one episode we started talking, and I'm like, yeah, I'm an alcoholic. And it was a little bit of a stumble like that, but the more that I talk about it and the more I use the word, it I've taken the power back from the word than it had over me. Like it, when people, I wouldn't even tell people I was sober. I'd tell people I don't drink. Like for the first 6 years. So I'm 8 years sober. Um, I've had no slip ups, no relapses. Um, it hasn't always been easy. That's kind of, we think that it gets easier over time, but that's not the case at all. And yeah, it took me a long time to say that word, and when I did, like I said, it took a little while for me to take the power back over it. And now I'm trying to remove the stigma. I'm not trying as hard as others. Like so there's a Unashamed Alcoholic, their podcast, and there's some others that are trying to take that word back, but it's not who I am, and it's not a problem, but it is a part of myself.
Mhm.
And so that's that's kind of where I get that from my chest a little bit about that too. So
Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay. When did you, so you're 8 years sober. First, congratulations.
thank you.
That's something that's, I know it's not easy. No, it's not easy. So congratulations, and from the bottom of my heart, proud of you. Um,
Thank you.
of course, of course. When did you start drinking? What was the turning point that you knew your drinking turned into alcoholism?
Um, it was college. So so my dad has not drank, as he would say, for probably coming up on 30 years. He's probably 28 years without a drink. But we never really talked about it growing up. However, I knew, like seeing my uncles, his father as well, that there were drinking challenges in the family. Um, so knowing this, like going through high school, grade school, I was very nervous about drinking, and I was a big athlete. So I played baseball and basketball, and I was worried about getting caught. I was like, if I get caught, I cannot miss a game. Like my life didn't revolve around school; it revolved around sports. So whatever I had to do to stay on that field, right? And I drank. First time that I got drunk was my senior year of high school. It was at homecoming, and I remember that first like feeling, like getting that buzz,
Hmm.
and just it was like my mind quieted down. Like all this anxiety that I didn't know was there just disappeared, and I could just be myself. And it felt like for the first time, like I could be myself. And then on top of that, everybody who was there, like everybody whose attention that I had wanted, like to be honestly my friend, to like ask me to go to the parties, to ask me to go to things outside of school. They thought I was fun. They thought I
You
was
were the.
cool.
I was about to say you were the fun guy.
Yeah. So like it's like, oh my, like yes, this is fantastic. Um and then I didn't drink again until after graduation. That was the only time I drank during that year. Um Over that summer, I drank a few times. My third time ever getting drunk. So I grew up in Wisconsin, and it's legal there to give your kids alcohol, no matter what age they are.
Wow. Okay.
And
I
it
didn't know
doesn't have,
that. Fun fact,
yeah,
y'all.
right? Like the drinking culture in Wisconsin is one of its own. Like it is, maybe the Irish have pretty close to this a similar culture, but for real, like it's everything revolves around drinking. And um, I was 18 at one of my dad's work parties. And I was like, "Hey, could I have a drink?" He's like, "Sure." You want a Mountain Dew? I'm like, "No." Could I have a drink? And then I asked for, I can't remember what I got, but it was probably like Southern Comfort or something.
Oh goodness.
And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get him so drunk, he's gonna be hungover the next morning." So I ended up having like 20 shots with my dad's coworkers, like 5 drinks. This is the third time I'm ever getting drunk, and I'm just putting them back. And all of his coworkers were just like, kind of cheering me on, like, yeah, awesome, look at the kid go. Almost like it was a rite of passage.
Mhm.
And then I worked with him, so I was summer help at the company he worked at. So I come walking in the next morning, and everybody's like, "Oh, how are you feeling today?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm fine." They're like, "You no headache or anything?" I'm like, "No. What are we doing today? Are we going out to the field? Am I going to go off on my own?" They're like, "Oh, well, that's pretty nice. Must be nice to be young."
Yeah.
But I mean, that just kind of gave me it made it seem like I was the cool, fun guy again, right? Like I was getting
Mhm.
that acceptance that I yearned for when I was a little kid. And in college, it just snowballed. It was like um, school always came easy to me. So if I went to class, I didn't have to study very much and I would get good grades. Um, so I just stopped going to class and started partying because if I'm getting good grades just by going to class, then I don't need to go to class to pass. And it by the time I was a senior, I knew which bars Monday night had the dollar beers, which bars Tuesday nights had the $5 Long Island iced teas. Like every single night we were going out and
Yeah.
drinking, and it turned into I blacked out every single time I drank. Um, I never got out of that stage. So I knew it was a problem that I was drinking so much. I would wake up in the morning, not know what I did for hours at a time. Sometimes no idea where I am. Like I woke up naked in a house I had no recollection of ever being in more than once. And it's like, who do I have to apologize to? Who was I mean to? Who did I who did I hurt? Like there was a lot of shame in the mornings.
Yeah.
So I started cutting back on the amount of times that I drank. My
But
last
you
2
still drink just as much, just not
yes.
timely as much. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
So I tried to do the moderation. I tried to have one or two drinks, but every single time that I had one drink, I had to have another, had to have another, had to have another. And I drank until I blacked out. And for the last 3 years that I drank, there wasn't a night that I drank that I didn't black out. And
Wow.
I might have drank twice a month at that point, but I'm making really bad decisions. I'm
Mm.
drinking and driving. I'm, sleeping with a lot of women, like no care in the world of what's going on, hating myself in the morning when I wake up.
Yeah.
I mean, legitimately hating myself when I look in the mirror. And that lasted for a long time. It's like, what am I doing with my life? The only reason I'm still here today is sheer luck. The only reason I've had the opportunities in my life is sheer luck. The fact that drinking never came back to bite me, part of it is because grew up in Wisconsin. The other part is just I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I never got pulled over, never got into an accident, never. It's just I wish that I could say that I made good decisions, but there were very few good decisions that I made. So my first 2-day hangover, can't keep anything down. I'd been having like micro sobriety bouts where I would stop drinking for like 2 months at a time here, 3 months at a time there. I go out and I just get obliterated. And I wake up and I knew I was that annoying person at some point in the night. Like I kind of remember the end of the night. I don't remember anything up until that. I'm in a house that I don't know with people I don't know, but I know that they liked me up until that point.
Yeah.
But then it was like I was the annoying drunk person, and my hometown's so small. I was like 2 blocks from my house, so I just walked to my parents' house.
Yeah.
Nobody was there. I was home alone. I pretty much the entire next day spent the day throwing up and sleeping. And I was supposed to go back home for with my girlfriend at the time and do something, and I was just like, I'm not gonna make it. She's like, I figured
Yeah.
when you went back home you weren't coming back. And it was like, oh, do I want a family? Like I'm a POS. Like I got nothing going for me. I have a dead end job that I hate. I wanted to be a lineman at that time, work with high voltage electricity.
Mhm.
It's like so you have to have a CDL to do that. Take calls at any time of the night. I can be able to do that. Like, it's become a big issue.
Yeah.
And so in the middle of not being able to even keep water down until 2 in the morning the next day, I'm just like, this has to be it. And so when I made that decision, I only told, I think, 3 people that I made that decision. And luckily, 2 of them were like, yep, perfect. Let's do this. I'm here for you. And one of them was my best friend's. And if he didn't get on board as much as he did, like with our other friends, like I said, drinking is a massive part of the culture.
Yeah.
If our other friends offered me a beer and we're like, come on, you can have one. One's not going to hurt you. He would step in between and he would say, no, he's not drinking.
Oh, that's such a hell of a support system, RJ.
Like I said, it was luck sometimes. It was not always skill. And
Oh, that's
so
great.
I avoided a lot of the triggers. I didn't go out to bars.
Mhm.
I didn't go out with certain friends that we would get obliterated with together. I only went to places basically with my girlfriend and with my best friend that I talked about, and that was it. And it was like probably a year or so of that. No, it was about 6 months of that, I'd say.
Okay.
And then I was okay with being around people while they drank. But
Mhm.
as soon as they got to a certain point, I just ghosted. I didn't even say bye. I was just, nah, I'm out.
Mhm.
I can't. And that's kind of how it was for about 6 years until we decided to start the podcast.
Wow. Wow. Well, like a lot of people say you can do a lot of things by yourself, and you absolutely can, because at the end of the day you did make the decision. Ultimately, you did. But you surrounded yourself with individuals who held you up and held you accountable and had your back. That's something that some people don't have. A lot of people, whether we're talking drinking, whether we're talking about overeating or undereating or any type of I won't say any type of crutch, any type of um
I would say toxic coping mechanism.
toxic coping
That's
mechanism.
kind of how I've started to define it, because
Hmm.
what I did was I went from alcohol to work
Oh, you became a
to
workaholic.
stories. So I didn't focus on why I drank the way I drank. Didn't even think about it. Didn't
Yeah.
It didn't occur to me that that is something I should think about. So like, I threw myself into work, and then a video game called Destiny came out, and I played it with a bunch of my friends from high school, and we looked back at the time we put into that game, and we're like, what were we thinking? We were all in our mid to late 20s at the time, and we would probably on weekends put in at least 8 hours a day, maybe 10.
Wow.
And I mean, like, not eat while playing kind of hours.
Just sitting
And
there, just going at it for
yeah,
hours.
yep. And it's like we're all in different cities, and at this point, like that game, we could play together and just have fun like we used to.
Hmm.
And
Okay. That's
it was,
understandable.
yeah. So it's, I mean, it does sound understandable, but at the same time, it's like
A little
we,
ridiculous.
yes, yeah. So it was. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was fun, and it's less destructive
Hmm.
than drinking was,
Yeah.
but I never, honestly, till like the past 5 or 6 months, I did not address the reason that I drank like I drank. And I just kind of went from one coping mechanism to another and turning it toxic.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So, um, a few things I want to touch on. Now
Yep.
you said you played baseball and you played basketball.
Hmm.
What positions did you play?
In basketball, I was a guard forward. So I was 6'2", and small town Wisconsin, that's pretty tall, but I still had a little bit of I wouldn't say ball handling skills, but I could pass really well.
Gotcha.
So and I had a really good shot too, so I was out at guard a lot, but I wasn't afraid to mix it up with the big guys either. So I'd get down with the forwards, and then baseball, I was center fielder.
Center field. Gotcha. Gotcha. Gotcha.
So, and I was defensively, I was a maniac. It was yeah,
Rushing
it was a
balls
lot of
and stuff
fun.
like that.
Oh yeah, I was like
I
a little
love
puppy out there. It's like you just gotta catch the ball, gotta get
it. I
it.
love those are two sports that I love. Well, um, baseball and basketball. I grew up playing both and in softball as well. Um,
What positions did you play?
I played third base. I played shortstop and I played power forward
Okay,
in basketball. Yeah.
all right. The
Yeah.
hot corner and short. So
Mm.
you got some reaction.
Yeah, yeah. And I love and I was really big in the paint too. Like I wasn't the biggest girl whatsoever. But when
Hmm.
it came to getting boards, getting those rebounds, I got a lot of body to to use. So I was defense. Me and my
Yeah.
wife, we play and um she was like top in her state when she was playing high school. So we like go blow for blow. We both walk away with bloody noses and stuff like that. It's a good time.
You're still competitive. I feel that. I
It's
feel
a
that.
good time. It's a good time. Okay, when you go, I want to go back to when you were drinking with your father and his co-workers where you were interning.
Hmm.
Um, how did how did that experience develop your manhood?
I I like how you put that because it felt like a rite of passage, right? It felt like especially the way they were reacting, like I said, kind of like cheering me on and like
Hmm.
laughing and everything that happened. It felt like going from being the little boy RJ to I'm turning into a man RJ. And being raised really heavily in toxic masculinity, um, that was a feeling that I craved.
Okay.
That was something that I didn't experience a lot of. Like I could almost feel like my dad being proud a little bit that I was
Yes.
holding my own like that. And he also thought it was funny that I was drinking his coworkers under the table.
Yeah.
So there was definitely a lot of that feeling, and I think back on it now, and I'm still proud of that moment. Like
Yeah.
there's still a little bit of pride there, which is yeah, it was a little bit of a turning point in like my mindset and everything, but so it is a little bit sad that I feel some pride there, but at the same time, I was really proud in that moment, and honestly, it was one of the few times in my life up till that point, or until honestly I became a lineman, that I was proud of myself. So
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So from the past few years, what are you most proud of?
I would say how good of a father I am.
Hmm.
Um, that's number one. What I'm the amount of patience that I show. So I have two boys, and they're 4 and 2.5, and I have a lot of patience with them. Not all the time, it can be rough, especially with them being so close in age.
Yeah.
But I allow for the imagination and the creativity. Um, I show them my love. I don't just tell them, I show them. I play with them, but I also allow the emotions. When they get emotional, that's okay. Like, yes, you get to be emotional, and we talk about what they're emotional about. We talk about those emotions. Like, obviously it starts with happy, mad, sad, but now we've started talking about frustrated. We've started talking about annoyed. We've started talking about um, feeling guilty and other emotions like that. We're getting more into it rather than just like, for me, it was happy or mad. That's all you were allowed to be, and you were allowed to pretty much only be mad. There
Yeah.
was no, you had to cap your happiness to at a certain point, because then you were being arrogant and gloating if you were too happy. So it there's that, and then I explain everything to them. So if we can't splash in puddles, well, why can't we splash in puddles? Because it's cold outside right now. And if you get wet and it's cold, you're going to get sick. And I don't want you to get sick. And I know you don't want to be sick.
Mm.
Well, if you put your boots on, you can walk through the puddles, right? So if I can explain to them why they can't do something, they know that they learn the reason why, but also like, I know that I'm making the decision because it's the decision that should be made, and not because I just don't want to deal with it as a parent. Like
Yeah.
about a month and a half ago, probably, I still put my boys to bed, so I was laying with them in bed, and I looked, and my oldest nails were long, so I was like, "Oh, tomorrow we have to trim your nails." And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "Because I said so." And he goes, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Trim your nails?" "Well, we trim your nails because that, they're too long. One day he takes a trimmer and he clips it. Sometimes you cry because you think it's going to hurt, but you realize it doesn't." And he goes, "No. What does 'because I said so' mean?" And I was
Wow.
like, "Oh my goodness. I've never said that to you before, have I?" And I said, "That just means that daddy's really tired. So the reason we need to trim your fingernails," and then I explained it. We don't want you scratching yourself, other kids getting dirt underneath. He's like, "Oh, okay." But I was like, I honestly had a little bit of a tear in my eye. I'm like, I've never said that to him before, and he's 4.
That's fantastic. Because like our parents, that was the standard because
Yeah.
I said so. And
Mm-hmm.
then there was nothing after that. I think
If there
on
was anything, at least for me, if there was anything, it was gonna be a hand,
a
right?
hand, like something, and it was gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Has anybody, either of your parents ever say, like, while you're crying, say, cut out that crying, or I'm gonna give you a reason to cry?
Every time.
Like,
Every time.
how how was I, like, I have to laugh because that is so traumatic. That is so
Yes.
traumatic. You're telling me I just got punished for doing something I probably shouldn't have been doing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just got punished. That punishment hurt. And then you're telling me that if I'm showing that I'm in pain, that you're going to give me more pain. I just
And sometimes I didn't even get those words. I just got the hand,
It just
right?
happened. Oh man. Uh we could talk forever about the shortcomings of our parents, and I just chalk it up to saying that they did the best that they could do with what they knew at the time. That
Yep.
is how that's how I justify it.
Same.
That's how I
Same. And
justify it.
that's um the one thing that, with my parents, like, I've brought it up to them before, like, uh they just, "Oh, I guess I was the worst parent in the world then," is their response. And it's like, well, no, I didn't say that. I just
Hmm.
said this was not something that worked well for me, especially now. And it's just like, it's still, I don't know if it's from a place of guilt or what it is, but they don't want to hear it.
I think it's I think it's coming from a place of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it's also from a place where, did my child just say that to me? Like,
Yeah.
did I just get checked? Like, because I handled that situation wrong. What kills me is that we can explain something that, our parents did wrong, and whether they believe it's wrong or not, which usually is because trauma, childhood adversity, like there's so many signs. Like I'm gonna shoot this RJ and
Yeah,
tell me if I sink this three. Your drinking was tied into your childhood by some way, shape, or form.
absolutely. Yep.
Bang, 3 point.
Yep. And so that's something that I did not think about or look into until, like, honestly, back in November, I finally started to be like, you know what? That did affect me. And that probably, like, this moment, which, there's probably like 10 moments in our life. Like, I'm
Hmm.
35, so there's probably 10 moments leading up to this that have really been key moments that kind of I went one way when I could have also gone another way.
Hmm.
And a lot of those moments are honestly from before I was 12.
Yeah.
And I've come to the realization that just because I had some, as you said, adversity didn't mean
Hmm.
I had a bad childhood.
Yeah.
And a, a lot of people, I would say, especially the older generation, thinks that you either had a good childhood or you didn't. There's no in between. And
It's
if you had
this or
trauma
that.
in your life, that means you had a terrible childhood. And it's like, that's not how it works.
Like, no, I know some children who had really bad upbringing, like bad.
Yeah.
I don't think my upbringing was bad, but of course, there was some childhood adversity, there was some childhood
Hmm.
trauma that I think that comes with the generation, the age that we are. I'm 33. So, you know, unfortunately, I don't know many people around our age who hasn't faced some type of traumatic incident in their lives. Now, not saying that their childhood was bad, but they did face some type of adversity growing up, which molded them into, or kind of into, the person they are today.
Yeah.
That
I
just,
mean, absolutely. You nailed it right there. Like, that's where I think, like, I've kind of gone from talking about sobriety and mental health, to, like, wait a second, it's not just drinking and sobriety. It's like, it's the coping mechanisms that we fell into that we turn toxic because they're negative in our lives right now.
mhm,
Like, my relationship with alcohol was unhealthy. There are people who have a healthy relationship with alcohol. So is alcohol inherently evil? I mean, we could debate that, but
yeah,
there are some people that can handle alcohol. And just because I'm an alcoholic does not mean that there's something wrong with me. It doesn't mean that I'm broken. It just
mhm,
means that that one thing I can't partake in because it changes who I am, and I don't like that person.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, we just touched on so much right there. Um, wow. Yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. Let Hey, 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 y'all. Listen, it is time for some action. If you are enjoying the content that you've been listening to, I need you to rate and review. That's it, that's all. Make sure you go to wherever you're listening to this podcast and rate and review it for us. We appreciate you so much. Let's get back to some resilience. Let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
Um, what can you think of a time where you had to use resilience to help you through a certain situation that has nothing to do with drinking?
Yeah. Um, yeah. Absolutely. So being a lineman, working high voltage electricity, when the power goes out, we're who you call. Like, um, and not a lot of people understand that it's not all along the road you can get in a bucket and go up. Um, I've had to going through the apprenticeship. It's a lot of toxic energy. It's a lot of, well, how do you not know this? Like, this is common sense. It's like, well, you learned it and now you've just known it for 30 years. What do you mean that it's just you know it? So I they like going through, they knew that my dad was also a lineman. They knew I was a city kid and I didn't work on a farm. Um, Sometimes I come off as condescending, especially like if I know a subject and I could tell that I know a little bit more than you, like I'm just gonna tell you you're wrong.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of people with egos that you can't do that. So they were not easy on me. They made life pretty difficult for me at work.
Yeah.
Um, to the point where like I was more stressed out in like this 4 month period than I was almost at any time in my life. Like I couldn't sleep. I wasn't eating very much. I was I would wake up Sunday night, Monday mornings like in cold sweats from fear of having to go into work. But I just had to do it because I needed to put food on the table. I
Hmm.
needed to get through it because I wasn't going to be with that crew forever. And it was just trying to trying not to get through just getting through like the day. It was getting through the next half hour. It was make it to lunch. All right, make it to the end of the day. Okay, try to get to, try to relax tonight. Well, that wasn't happening. All right, same thing. Make it to lunch, make it to the next day. Sometimes make it through that task that we had to do.
Hmm.
Um, and it really was hard. And I can I can put on a pretty good poker face, so a lot of people I don't think realized how hard it was, but like from that moment on, I'm not the type of person who I blaze a path and I burn it behind me. I blaze that path and I yell back, "Hey, come on, follow me."
Yeah.
And so any apprentice that I saw who was having a rough time, I would take aside and I would be like, "Hey, here are some things that I learned that helped me deal with these people. Hey, this is how you do this task and he won't bother you about it anymore." Kind of like that thing. And there's a lot of people that are like, "Well, I went through this, so you should go through it too." It's like, why?
You
Why are
you
we
should
doing
have gone
this?
through that so I don't have to go through it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's how I feel our generation reacts though too. Like I talked about this. So, Twitter Spaces?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I've been in a lot of Twitter Spaces and like I with a lot of my friends that I have met through like Twitch and the podcast and stuff. And I just talked about how I feel like our generation is the first generation where the older generations they keep kicking the can down the road. That's the problem. Keep kicking the can. I feel like our generation is like, no, this can is an issue. Let's deal with it.
Hmm.
So we are
Yeah.
spotlighting mental health. We are looking, wait, we should not be working 50 hours a week without any pay. We should not be working full time and not be able to afford rent or food or any of this. Like everybody deserves to live with dignity. Like these are problems we are talking about. And a lot of the other generations, well, that's the way it always has been. So why should it be any different?
And I think they feel like you said they had to deal with it. So why should we improve it? Like, and it's
Yeah.
like I said with our parents, like they did the best they could at that time, with what they had. They had to deal with the nagging boss and the boss who touched women's butts and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like,
Sometimes worse,
no.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And then here we come, right? Here. here we come. No, but
Yeah.
this isn't happening. Like we actually, I know I read somewhere that I think starting with our generation, we actually look for work that serves a purpose, that's meaningful, not
Hmm.
just, clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out. Like, I mean,
We're not
yeah,
working to live, right? Or we're not living to work, we're working to
working to
live.
live. Like, I go to work so I can have a good life. I don't go to work so I can survive.
Yep.
And I think that's where our parents and us disconnect. They were going to work so they can survive. And we were like, no, that's not, that's why there's so many like mental health issues and stuff like that. And you work, our dads are at work and they work for this horrible guy and they come home, they take it out on us. Stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Yep.
We change the narrative from some toxic stuff that we just weren't dealing with anymore. Kudos to us.
Yeah, I agree. And like so in the utility industry, they're really uh trying to figure out how to deal with it, right? We have to be on call 24/7. They expect us to put aside our family, and if that phone rings, we say how high. Like we're not asking, wait, why am I jumping there? Like,
Mm-hmm.
hold on, I'm with my family. No, you're gonna wait to till they're in bed or whatever. And they're like, well, the older generation did this. Why are you having so many issues? What do you the older generation like didn't make it to retirement? What do you mean? Why
I
are
was
we
say, do
doing
you
this?
see? Do you see? Are we looking at the same eyes?
Yeah, so
We
like
can't be.
they're trying to figure out ways to force us to do this, and it's like, no, I'm gonna live, and if part of that is, sometimes on my off hours, I'll go in. But yeah, here's something else. Like I was in a district that was supposed to have 5 guys. There was only two of us. Only two of us. I worked every single weekend out of pride that was drilled into me for some reason. I worked every single weekend except for two for pretty much the entire year.
Wow.
And it was at like between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And it was, I was burned out for like 2 years. It took to finally get to a point where I felt mentally back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And
What did you use to get mentally back in the game?
um it was that was right before we started the podcast. So like we started the
Gotcha.
podcast.
Gotcha.
Um I picked up cooking. So like, that was something that I did a little bit was I picked up new hobbies when I got sober, but I figured out that I like to cook. I just don't know. I don't understand how to shop for the ingredients and not let them go bad.
Okay.
So I did Blue Apron when my oldest son was born. I'm like, 3 meals a week are going to be taken care of. I don't have to shop. Like it comes right to the door. Through that, I discovered like I love cooking, and I love it when I can cook and I can make it taste good. So now it has taught me how to shop for decent ingredients and to shop for multiple meals
Mm-hmm.
so that I can cook them, and then improving my knife skills so that it doesn't take me an hour and a half per meal. It only takes me 30 to 50 minutes to cook. So
Yes.
like that has also been huge. Like that's a big stress reliever for me is cooking.
Nice. Okay. Um, Question about like your apprenticeship.
Hmm.
How many women were in there?
um two two women in the entire company. So there were two women line techs, I should say, in the
Uh-huh.
entire company. I want to say 170 people. There were probably two women and maybe three people of color.
And this is all in
And that's
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin.
right? In
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
But those communities exist. There's just gates set up.
Yeah.
All of the technical colleges where, I shouldn't say all, 95% of technical colleges where you go to line school are out in the country. They're in small towns.
Gotcha.
There is no, it's only 30 minutes from Madison. And then the Milwaukee one is only 10 minutes outside of Milwaukee. But guess what? There's no bus that goes to and from the schools.
Of course.
And even like uh, Beloit and Janesville, it's pretty close to Beloit. But again, the campus is out in the country. No, there is a bus that goes there, but like you have to follow the bus line to like the north side, which is the nice side, and you
Gotcha.
take it out. And it's like I've brought this up um because I did put myself out there. I'm like, we need people of color. Like we should look more like the communities we serve.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That got met with what kind of
Um
force?
it was a lot of lip service, and then they finally put in place a program to hire more people of color and women into, like, so we did natural gas. So there was natural gas, line work, and then there was designing the jobs, where they wanted all three of those to include people of color and women. I want to say they hired 10 people. There was one woman and two people of color. And I saw they got hired, and the immediate thing was, well, I got hired because he's black. And it's like, why do you think that? Well, because that's what this program's for. So you meet him. Oh, I worked for another utility. I was in the metering department. Like, I don't know the big stuff, but I would like to.
Hmm.
And then you hear kind of how he's being treated. He's kind of on the outside. It was, he met with a lot of ignorance, not necessarily straight up racism, but when I called it out that, hey, he's not being treated one of the guys, you need to send him somewhere else, I was ostracized. Like,
Yeah.
nobody wanted to talk to me anymore. I had nobody I could call, like, if I needed help, because I was running a crew at the time. My crew was fine with me because I put them first. I
Yeah.
always put everybody else first. I was big on the mental health of our crew, but everybody else was like, "Oh, he's going to throw you under the bus." I never went to management and named names. I just said, "This is an issue."
Hmm.
Then
This is happening. Yeah.
it's your responsibility to train to make the environment better for everybody else.
Yeah.
I said, we're not in school anymore. There's no teaching, and nobody is going to go do the research to teach themselves.
Hmm.
It's your responsibility to do it. So they put together some training, but it was all done by white people, and it wasn't good. So, and it never changed. And I was like, you know what? My family, so my boys are half black. Like, we decided that we needed to move out of Wisconsin, so we ended up
Hmm.
moving to the East Coast, and it was a great decision. I'm
Gotcha.
really glad that we did it.
Good, good, good. I'm glad. I'm glad you were able to see that there was a problem, and you did what you could do. And then the moment you realized that not much was changing, no one really wanted to change, you then say, you know what, I'm going to take myself out of this situation. I'm gonna take me and my family, and we're going to move. Like,
Hmm.
kudos to you for being able to do that.
I
Because
appreciate it.
yeah, of course, like I said, flowers where flowers are due, because I know a lot of people that would have been in your situation that would have been like, well, it's not affecting me, so I'm gonna just keep doing what I do.
And before they let him go, I was on the phone. So I had Fridays off. I was on the phone for 5 or 6 hours
Yeah.
calling managers like, hey, he can make it. I see it in him. Like,
Hmm.
nobody's taking the time to show him this stuff. Like, I took my tools out of the truck, and he went and got a notebook and wrote down what every single one was. It's like,
Yeah.
the want is there. but he's just not in a situation that is he's going to succeed in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that Monday, he was let go. And the same thing was around the pride flag.
Mhm.
So there's an internal group that sent the pride flag around every site. My manager and my foreman at the time made a big deal about how they weren't going to fly it. And I said, why? Why
Mhm.
are we not going to? We're in a very liberal area. Why would we not fly that? You never know who's going to drive past and see it, and they feel comfortable being themselves. You know what?
Exactly.
They accept me. And it ended up going to a site vote, and it was made into a big deal. And I was very upset at this point that they were so adamant it wasn't going to fly.
Mhm.
Passed by one vote that it was going to be put up. I thought for sure it was going to fail, but it ended up passing by one vote. And
Nice.
that was also turned into a big deal. Like, hey, don't go, don't clue RJ into anything because he's going to
Yeah.
turn it against you.
He's gonna go out
Like,
there. He's out here ruffling feathers. Like we don't want anything to do with him when all you're trying to do is be inclusive
yep.
and be
Let
inclusive.
everybody know. Just be yourself.
Yep.
Be
That's
yourself unapologetically.
awesome. Awesome. RJ, do you have anything that you want to share with our listeners at all?
Um, I think something that I've really come to uh, appreciate
Hmm.
over the past today, especially, like, be open to creating and accepting relationships wherever they come from.
Yeah.
I've met so many people over the past couple of years through the podcast, over the internet, like, that you would think, we used to think, oh, they're over the internet, they're not real friends, right? And that's not the case. Like, I've been going through some I've had some rough days, especially this week. And the amount of people that have reached out, and, like, they didn't just reach out through text, they sent voice messages. They sent, hey, I want to have a Zoom call with you this weekend, I want to help cheer you up. Like,
Yeah.
the amount of love that I have felt from these relationships that I've been more open to has been, it's been eye opening. And the thing is, like, I'm in a place now where I believe them.
Yeah.
It wasn't it used to
It's
be,
not just lip
oh,
service.
yes, it used to be, oh, they're just being nice, oh, they're just being, yeah, that's how I used to think everybody.
Yeah.
But now, like, I believe them, and, like, it lifted me up, and I needed that. So just be open to the relationships wherever they come from.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. RJ, where can we follow you and how can we support Untapped Kegs?
So you can go to untappedkeg.com. You'll find our podcast and our YouTube channel there, youtube.com/untappedkeg. The audio podcast is anywhere you can listen to podcasts, Untapped Keg. Social media, we're on every single platform, and we're Untapped Keg. Nobody thought to, like, take Untapped Keg for anything, so we got it everywhere.
Nice.
And especially Instagram and Twitter, we're very active on both of those. Our DMs are open if you need to talk. Like, no matter, I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I am genuine when I say, if you need to talk, I will be there for you. I will help you get any resource that you need. And you know what? I'll be your friend.
Love to hear it. And with the little amount of time that we've known each other, I 110% believe every word you just said. Like
I
110%, because we're so supportive of each other. And I know if anyone needs to vent, to help, just, you know, I just need to get this off my chest, or, ask you questions about, your sobriety and, anything on that line. I know you'd
mhm.
be open for that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing, if you're just starting your sobriety journey, just know that it is a journey and it's yours. There is no right or wrong way. It's yours. And that's the most important part about it.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, RJ. I have one final question for you.
Yep.
You ready? Okay.
Yes.
What does resilience mean to you?
Resilience. It's such a powerful word, right? When I hear resilience, I think about skinny Steve Rogers in that back alley and getting up after getting the crap beat out of him and saying, I can do this all day. And then when he gets stronger and he's fighting Thanos and all hope is lost, what's his response? I can do this all day. That is, when I hear the word resilience, that's what I picture. And it's not always pretty. It's not always heroic, but it's continuing to show up even when everything is telling you not to. That's resilience.
That's resilience in action. That's wonderful. RJ, thank you so much for spending a little time with us this evening.
Thank you for having me. This was, I love talking to you. So
awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Resilience in Action with Erin Brown. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And I want you to remember one thing: resilience in action will always lead to a greater human experience.